Hey everybody, I hope life's treating you well and your studies are going smoothly. Today we're going to crack on with some social influence revision and we're going to cover minority influence. So let's do it. Right, here's a mix of questions you can have a go at to test yourselves. I would encourage you, if you can, to try and set yourself a strict kind of time limit. So it's time and a quarter in terms of marks. So for the 16 marker, that would be 20 minutes. For a 4 marker, that would be 5 minutes. A 6 marker is 7.5, and a 3 marker is just under 4 minutes. So give yourself a bit of time and space to have a go. Pause the video, come back when you're ready, and I'll talk through. Right, identify just means state. So you need to write down commitment, consistency, and flexibility. Question 2. You're looking for a definition, something like, this is where a minority group or an individual persuades a majority to change their views or change their behaviour, and it's often linked to internalisation. Question 3, commitment. So this is where a minority becomes persuasive by enduring some kind of personal sacrifice or putting in, a significant amount of effort, something like that. Which encourages, this is maybe the second mark, which encourages the majority to take their argument seriously or pay more attention to their argument. Second row, we want a study this time. It's just knowledge, it's an outline question. I would be tempted to go for the Moscovici study here. So this was the blue-green slide study. So Moscovici recruited female students, put them in groups where they were the majority. They had a minority of 2 Confederates. And there were 2 conditions. There was a condition where the minority consistently said that the slides were green every time. There was an inconsistent condition where the minority said that they were green some of the time. And Moscovici measured conformity. Well, it's not conformity because that would be majority, sorry. It's measured the extent to which the minority were influential. So how many times the participants said that the slides were green as opposed to blue, because it was pretty clear that they were blue apparently. So findings, the consistent group were I think it was about 8% or just under 8% persuasive, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you compare it to the inconsistent condition, which was 1 or 1.25 I think it was percent persuasive, so significantly more persuasive if they were consistent. That's plenty for 3 marks. Question 6, outline factors that contribute to minority influence. Well, this is basically a 3 times 2 marks, because what you need to do is explain commitment, flexibility, and consistency. I've already been through commitment. So consistency is about holding the same argument over time. You might refer to diachronic and synchronic consistency. So that is the same argument over time and the same argument between members of the minority group. Flexibility is about being willing to listen and negotiate with the majority so that you don't come across as too rigid, or dogmatic is a good word to include in there. Because if you're not willing to listen, why should other people listen to you, right? Now we have an AO2, an application question. So we've got Cara. Cara wants to go fossil hunting, and the rest of the family just want to go to the beach or stay at the holiday park. For 6 marks, we're going to have the 3 factors applied here. Okay, so Cara could show consistency by every day putting out there the view that, today we could go fossil hunting. Yeah, so she's showing consistency. She could show commitment by saying, if we go fossil hunting today, then I don't know, I'll sort dinner out tonight, or I'll pay for us to do, whatever it is. If we all go, then I'll pay for us all to go, or whatever it might be. Some kind of personal sacrifice to get everybody to go. She could show flexibility by saying, well, I hear that you don't want to go fossil hunting very much, so maybe we'll just do, a couple of mornings, and the rest of the day we could do everything that you want to do. Yeah? So commitment, consistency, and flexibility. Final line, bit of evaluation now. A strength of research here. It's not so much the theory that minorities can have an influence, it's research. So, for example, the Moscovici study. A strength is that research such as this is done in controlled conditions. This allows us to control extraneous variables, such as how long stimuli are perceived for, other conditions in terms of how many people are around, or other factors in the environment, whatever it might be, which allows us to ascertain with more confidence that the IV, so whether the minority is consistent or inconsistent, is indeed causing the DV, so whether or not they're influential. This gives us, this is a kind of conclusion to that strength, this gives the study greater internal validity. Okay, so however, in terms of a limitation, the research that I chose for this question is actually artificial. So one limitation of this research is that it may be artificial. Tasks such as, and again I'm picking Moscovici, you don't have to, tasks such as deciding on the colour of a slide among a group of strangers are not reflective of everyday kind of social influence decision making that people do. Yeah, because of this lack of ecological validity, such research maybe only tells us a limited amount about real life influence. Done. Evaluate the role of flexibility. I'd probably go down the research support route here. So there's a study by Nemeth and Bromer, you may be aware of it, where they basically got kind of like a mock kind of jury kind of situation, where there was a victim of a ski lift accident, and the groups had to decide how much compensation to award. They had two groups. In one, a Confederate was really, quite keen to award a certain amount of money, and it was a lot higher than everybody else. And in that first group, that Confederate did not negotiate at all. Yeah. In the second group, the Confederate kind of late on started going, okay, yeah, well, I hear what you're saying. Let's kind of meet in the middle a bit. And that one that was flexible was much more influential. Okay, so what does this suggest? Well, it shows us that flexibility is an important factor in minority influence. But to take this a bit further, if it was a slightly bigger question, or if you didn't feel you'd quite written enough, really for 4 marks, I want to see another side to this. So, however, despite research support for flexibility, there is also research support for consistency. So we want to be flexible, but we don't want to be too flexible because we understand that consistency is important as well. So flexibility is only one factor. Okay, so for 16 marks now, the last one. We're going to break it down and we're going to do 6 marks of knowledge on, look at the question, it does say research. So I'd outline the Moscovici study. If you knew enough, then you could get 6 marks of knowledge just using that. But you could also throw in the Nemeth and Bromer one if you wanted to. They're not key studies, but you should know some element of research. So it is worth picking 1 or 2 of those to try and learn. In terms of your evaluation marks, we're looking for 3 or 4 Peel-style paragraphs. Personally, I'd go for 3 with a little bit of discussion and counterpoint. I've talked through a couple of ideas already. So earlier on, I said about how it's controlled conditions, which gives us internal validity. You could then chain that into a discussion about the lack of ecological validity because it's artificial. And that fits the question really well because it's about discussing what the research has actually told us. So if it's, it lacks mundane realism because it's not very realistic, has it really told us much about minority influence in the real world? Probably not. Yeah. And again, you could have a discussion about the role of flexibility in comparison to consistency. And possibly for a 3rd or 4th point, depending on what you've done with what I've just said, you might bring in some kind of real life examples. So, you've just had a discussion maybe about how the lab studies lack ecological validity, but that might lead nicely into a little discussion saying, oh, well, despite this limitation, we do understand from real world examples that consistency and commitment are important. You could bring in the suffragettes here, for example, or the civil rights movement, an example from, Gandhi and the Salt March, whatever it might be, whatever you've learned, whatever you're aware of. But because those factors are seen in the real world to be important, that arguably increases the external validity of that research we've been talking about. Yeah, because we're seeing that those findings are being borne out in the real world. Okay, so on balance, really, some of the discussion is probably leading us to the conclusion that, this research isn't perfect, but a lot of what's been found does actually seem to tell us about how minority influence does work in the real world. Okay. There you go. Think about how you've done. Because it's time to reflect. So, for the questions you picked, if you've even if you've only superficially marked it, even if you've just used kind of like ticks or smiley faces or anything like that, think about that performance. How did it go? And reflect on, well, okay, I got that right. How difficult was it? Did I have to look anything up? Did I actually stick to the time limit? All of that kind of stuff, yeah? Because you need to action plan, yeah, to try to benefit more from this time. Don't just do it, forget about it, move on. Actually think about, how is this going to feed back into my, next steps in my revision? Okay, I hope that was useful for you. Good luck. Keep going, guys. Drop me a comment if you want to ask a question or you want any support, and I'll try and get back to you. Thanks very much, guys. See you again. Bish, bash, bosh.